Hello friends, this is the full commentary version of this series. See the description below for the link to all 17 or more videos that belong to this for greater detail. So what I'm showing you here is the ground. I have to get the containers level, so in comes the tractor, and we're going to scrape away some of the dirt and get the ground flat and level with the white container, so when we put the new container on, that the floors match up. I want the floor to match up side to side so it's easier to roll over with the motorcycles and the tools and everything else. So you got to do dirt work before you're going to set your containers down if you want to have them flush floor to floor. So here I'm adding some media. It's rock, clay, sand, basic stuff for leveling out the ground. And I'm going to spread it out and get it level. Right. I hid the part where I got the string and everything else. This is a 50 horsepower four-wheel drive Kubota. That's a 3-point hitch. You can drag that container around all day long and move it where you want it. I got a little stuck in some dry sand, so I had to backtrack, turn around, hook it back up, and then we're on the move. And we're going to end up right next to the white container. And you'll see them side by side. So now it's time to cut the wall out. I'm using a plasma cutter. You can try cut off wheels, but you're going to go through a bunch of them. So that's a $500 plasma cutter I got from Northern Tool a while back. It's kind of on the fritz because I used it so much. It's no longer with us. I bought another one. I like to cut from the bottom. A little bit of smoke in there. That's from burning off the paint. Cut from the bottom first. That way, when you cut from the top, the whole thing will drop down. If you start on the top and then cut the bottom, it gets a little wonky. I'm just showing you the inside of the container. I'm talking about the floors. This one, the floor is level with the steel on the sides. Some of them got a drop down floor where there's an inch or more gap. You'll have to build those up with some plywood or something like that if you want the floors to be the same height once the containers are together. So continuing cutting the bottom off. What I'm showing you here is the way that plasma cutter just goes right through. Uh, Sometimes there's a little bit of slag. You come back, you bang it with a sledgehammer, and it'll separate pretty easily. If you're using a cutoff wheel, um, there's a lot of play in that thing. You'll see it buckle when I'm cutting on it. So the cutoff wheel is a little bit dangerous. I'm not using that. We're going to switch back around and I'm going to show you what it looks like from the inside when I'm running that plasma cutter. It just slices right through. It works really, really good. I'm going to cut up the sides, not all the way because I want a little bit of material left. So when I cut the top, that thing doesn't fall on me. So the wall will stay in place while I'm using the plasma cutter on the top. So we're going to shift around and start cutting the top out. I didn't time this one, but later on when we do the white wall, I timed that one. It took about an hour and 15 minutes from the time you start cutting until the wall drops out. So you can see how that wall is buckling out at the top. If you're using a cutoff wheel, it's going to bind and break a bunch of them. So I'm going to cut this back wall out, and then we're going to shift around to the front and relieve that, and the whole thing's just going to drop right out. So it's still attached, not any danger here. When we get up here, I'm going to cut some holes in the sides there. That's so I can hook a chain to it and drag that wall out of the way. So time for timber. There it goes. Hook the tractor up with the chain, and drag that thing out of the way, and then wall number one's out of the way. Right here I'm showing you that there's a little bit of a lip there from where the plasma cutter was cutting. It did slice into those rings a little bit, so they're going to have to get moved out of the way anyway because that's where you walk. The difference in the thickness between the wall and the support structure, I'm not cutting through there. You can if you want to, but the way I'm going to set this container up is it's going to be offset from the ends, and I'm going to leave those in place. So this is a look at the top and the sides. I got off my mark a little bit. It's not really necessary. I'll trim that off later. So this red container is going up against this white container, and I want the raised flat portions of the wall to match up with the ends of the containers because it's going to be offset. So if you have a tractor, it's easy to move. A little four-wheel drive maybe to help push it. What I'm doing now is I'm checking for the floor level to make sure the floors match up. I'm a little bit high on this red container with the edge of the floor on the white container, so I'm going to drag it back and forth a little bit, see if I can burrow it in there, but it's not going to work. You'll see that later. So here we are, we're going inside. This space here between the two containers, when you're done, you just fill it with some of that spray foam and it'll seal right up. Put some paint on it, it'll last for years. You don't have to worry about rain or bugs or anything else making it through. I'm a little bit high, so I'm going to have to level it down some more to get my height just the way I want it. So here we are, we're on the white container side, and we're going to cut this wall out. Somebody asked how long it took, so I wrote the time on the wall, and then we get to cutting. So just like we did on the red container, using that plasma cutter and just cutting that wall out. Got a little fogginess going on in the camera because of the temperature change. I'll fix that in a minute. Fixed. Setting up and showing you all the rest of the cutting. I'm going to cut around this plug. I'll fix that later. So the reason this plasma cutter is on its way out, there's a magnetic valve in there that stopped working. So once I start it, I can't stop it without physically going back and tapping on that piece to get it to light again. So it's kind of like go as fast as you can while it's still working before it overloads and shuts down. So we're almost done. I'm cutting holes in the wall to drag it with, and then I got the tractor out there with tension on it to pull the wall so I don't want it to fall on us by mistake. And you can see it just rips right off and goes. And then we're just going to drag that out of the way. I'm going to stack it on top of that other wall in the background eventually. And then I'm going to use those hunks of steel for other projects later. I want to build some shelves on the outside. That's going to be my shelving material. So an hour and 15 minutes to get that wall out. In the previous edition, I didn't have the part where we put them together. So I've gone back and added some material to this video to try to make it more explanatory or process by process. But again, there's 17 individual videos that make up this whole thing. So if you want to see a specific part, you can cruise on over to the playlist. I've got them listed 1 through 17. And it provides a little bit more detail. or a lot more detailed, depending on what you're looking for. So if I can do it, you can do it. It's not that difficult. I like to call it my Lego shop because anytime I want to add another container, all I got to do is get one and I can attach it anywhere I want and expand the shop. So that red container, when I purchased it this year, it was 3,200 bucks. When I purchased that 40 footer a couple years ago, it was 3,200 bucks. And then the two 20 footers I have on the front, they were $700 each. So here we are, we're lining the containers up. My floor seam is still a little bit high, so we're going to do some things, dragging it back and forth, trying to work that container into the dirt and drop it down a little bit. That's not going to work. Of course it's not going to work. So we're going to end up pulling them apart, and then I'm going to drag the box blade on there and drag out some dirt to get them level. So here we are pulling the containers apart, and I'm grading down the dirt, checking it with the board and the measuring tape, see how far we got to go. So here I got the floors the same height, right? So white container level with red container on the floor side. When you look up top, they're about the same, but my main concern is the floor. So the way I got that positioned, you can just step right across. You know, there's just a little hump there from the metal part. We're going to grind that smooth later on, but for now, getting them level was my main concern. So here I'm talking about the gaps. We're going to fill that in with spray foam on the sides. The top's going to be welded. You're not going to be able to see daylight through there when we're finished. It'll be a completely sealed unit. So now we got to get that floor side matched up. We got to pull it in a little bit closer. So I got to come along and some straps, and you tighten it up, and it'll pull it all the way over there, and then you weld it up, and it doesn't go anywhere. So we're tightening it up, moving it around, getting our gap down as close as we can, and then come back and grind that cutoff part, and then start welding that floor together. I'm just using a MIG welder on this. It's a MIG welder with some flux core wire in it. If I'd have been paying attention, I'd have bought some more. But I'm going to run out when we get to the top. So I'm not welding the full seam right now on the floor. I'm just welding enough to hold it together so it doesn't break apart. And then there's a lot of grinding down there. So you need the big 7-inch wheel with the big dog grinder. You can see it right there. Makes pretty quick work of all that stuff. So I'm moving my 220 over, get it out of the way so we don't run into it. And then I'm just going to weld it up there onto the wall because it's metal. So that's where it lives now. This is not finished welding on the floor. This is just getting welding on the floor. So same thing on the top. Going to weld a full seam on there. There's been some questions about why. I've got 3 containers together already, and I didn't weld full seam on the top. Just welded some beads along the top, and then I came back and welded some plate over it, and it leaks. So there's the seam, there's a plate, there's roofing tar, there's caulk, there's all sorts of other stuff, but it leaked. So just do yourself a favor, run a full bead across the whole top of that container, and there's less chance of there being holes. Now there's porosity and all that other stuff, but a little bit of sealant, some paint will plug up those porosity holes pretty fast. So this red container hasn't sprung a leak yet. I don't expect it to. I had to switch to stick welding because, like I said, I ran out of MIG wire. So this is the same thing, just plugging along one stick at a time, doing the best we can. So we're almost to the end, welding the seam, and then I'll walk you back over the top of it. This is the boring part. So it's your floor. You finish it the way you want it. But me and my buddy over there, we ground the whole thing so that there's nothing sticking up so you trip on it or stub a toe on it or hang a wheel on it or anything like that. Uh, he's finishing up the grinding and then I'm finishing up the welding. I'm going to run a full seam on the floor just like I did on the top. Just makes for a better finish. It's probably not necessary, but you know, it's going to keep the bugs out and the ants and roaches and everything else. So sticks are cheap, wire's cheap. Just go get some more and finish that thing out the way you like it. You'll be happier with it that way. I'm happy with it the way it is right now. When we're done with all this welding and grinding, then you have to think about the finish on the metal part. So I treat that with, you know, Rust-Oleum spray paint. And then after that, we'll come back and spray it with just regular house paint, latex, to finish up the floors and the walls and get everything to match so that it doesn't look so Lego-ish with different colors and everything. I'm having a bit of trouble right here with this gap. It's a little bit bigger than I like, but you know, little Texas TIG action, and we'll get it all sealed up. This whole process of adding this container was only a couple days. So a day for dirt work, a day to pull them together, put them together, and then start welding them together. And then another day of full welding and full grinding and then everything else. So this is where I sprayed it with the Rust-Oleum for treatment. Now what I'm doing is I'm putting this reflective coating on the roof. And this Texas, it's hot. It's a metal container out in the sun. It gets pretty hot. So anything you can do to minimize heat transfer from the sun to the inside is a good idea. So you can see over here on the right where that container is painted white. The color makes a definite difference in the heat inside. So I bought this reflective stuff. It's my first time using it. It works. So, you know, definitely lowers the temperature inside the containers. There's insulation inside the containers. I use that 3/4 inch foam sheet, the poly stuff. Um, there's a whole video on me sticking that stuff in there. So 17 videos in this whole series, plus a couple extras for wiring and everything else. Uh, the container, when I'm in there during the summertime, I got AC units running. It's fine. Like I said, it's Texas. It's hot. So whatever we can do to minimize the heat with reflective paint and insulation is good. What I'm doing now is I'm touching up all of the rust spots, weld spots with the Rust-Oleum, and then here comes the latex. I have an airless sprayer and just go to town. Make everything match. So there's the old white wall, getting a new paint job. That way everything matches. And then I paint the floor white. So here we are with a little photo update slideshow type thing. First wall's cut out, second wall's cut out there together. This is the mess of the construction process with all the welding and grinding. And then when we're finished with all that, we're going to come back. We're going to paint everything, make it all match. And then got to move everything over there, get everything set up, install power, air, lights. You can see that foam insulation on top right there. And then there's foam insulation, and then I'm using these LED strip lights. I like those a lot. So here we are with the decorating. Got my poster set up. Got my pirate flag and my motorcycle poster set up. And then I was lucky enough, somebody sent me an Eldest Build sticker, so there's that. Got one on the front wall, roll-up door. So thanks for watching. Again, check the link. Y'all take care.